Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, 8 years, 8 pivotal moments, 2 hosts. Master using it and you can have this, and the Nintendo Cartridge Society masters it with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. Let's talk about what just happened.
What just happened there, Mark, is we've been using the same little bit of dialogue from the original Legend of Zelda, It's Dangerous to Go Alone. We abbreviate the Take This, which normally comes after it, but we've been using that at the top of every episode, and I figure 799 episodes in, it's time to start auditioning other lines of dialogue from the original Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I am super into this because it means that in 8 years from now, we may have to move on to Zelda 2, in which case the end of our cold open at every episode might be like, I am error. So
That's
the Nintendo
true.
Cartridge Society is error with you.
But first, we got to get through all the other lines of dialogue from the original Legend of Zelda. There's only like 100, so like by this time next year, we could be moving on to.
Yeah, we'll blow through that in
we'll blow
no
right
time
through
at
it.
all.
It'll be no problem.
8 years. Wow.
Yes, so our original episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, titled No NX Rumors, was published on August 11th, 2016. And so, you know, now we're on like a bit of an anniversary here.
Yeah, exciting.
Happy anniversary, Mark.
Yeah, happy anniversary. I think let's see, what is I should have looked this up. Oh, this is embarrassing. I should have looked it up ahead of time. What is the gift for an 8th anniversary?
Yeah, well, are you going to go by the traditional list or the like modern? Because there are differences.
Oh yeah, okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if the
It's
knot
like Hallmark has
is
a
coming
list
through.
Oh,
for
the
me.
knot.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
8th, traditional, bronze or pottery.
Okay.
Modern, linen or lace.
And then ultra modern, it says Zelda quotes.
You remembered.
If you would like to remember with us, you can head on over to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you are supporting us at the 8 or 16-bit levels, you get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries. We are currently making our way through NCS Arcade Season 2.
Yeah, that's right. And I know we keep threatening it, but Patrick got COVID. I promise we are going to record an episode about Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, originally released for the Nintendo DS. And then we've got a whole nother episode coming for October. So there's a lot going on. Everybody should join our Patreon. You can join for free. And when you join for free, you get access to our listener feedback episodes that we do after every episode of NCS Arcade. And if you want to participate in those episodes, you should send us an email about Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow or any of the like Castlevania, Metroid, Igavania games.
Yes, and you can send that email to Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. So participate in that, be involved, and let's all have fun together. And then you should be in the Discord as well if you are not already in the Discord. Look, Nintendo announced new hardware today, sort of. So we were a buzz about it in the Discord. You should get in that Discord. Email us and we will send you an invitation and you can chat with us all day long. Mark, we got an email from a listener. It is always available to you as a listener of the show to email us, and maybe we will read your emails on the show. We got an email response to the F-Zero episode that we put out last week. And the email reads, "Hi, I've been in a deep F-Zero hole ever since F-Zero 99 came out. So YouTube recommended me the Who's That F-Zero Racer episode of your podcast, and I enjoyed listening to it while grinding Ace Cup attempts in the latest update. My favorite F-Zero character, besides Captain Falcon, is the Skull. I love his backstory and design, and he is my go-to in F-Zero X. Unfortunately, he's pretty terrible in GX. Rather than attempting to sum it up myself, here's a link to his F-Zero fandom wiki page. And we'll check out that link in just a second. But the email continues. Thanks for the fun episode. I'll try to catch more in the future. From Techno Syndro. Thank you, Techno Syndro. Love to have new people checking out the show and checking out the show on YouTube. Mark, I did not click this link because I didn't know if like maybe we would just try to do what we did before now and try and guess who Skull is.
Well, I've already opened it, and so I've scoped out the Skull, but I think you should play it, and I'll tell you
great.
hot or cold.
Okay, so I'm guessing this is literally death, right? That his head is a skull and it's like floating above, probably like a wearing like a racing suit, right? Like a tight looking like racing suit body, a little bit like I'm picturing Mr. Grimm from Twisted Metal. And now I know that Twisted Metal is like a hallmark we should be using for these things tonally. And that his deal is that he is literally death. That's my guess.
Okay, you're it's a pretty like generally in the ballpark, I would say.
All right.
Okay, so I think I think the Skull looks more like Red Skull from
Marvel.
Yeah. He is.
Oh man, speaking of Marvel, I just should have said Ghost Rider.
But yeah, I think you should click on the link because it is like skeleton seemingly. I can't tell if it's cybernetic or not, or like what exactly his deal is, like if it's a reanimated corpse or just like an alien that happens to look like a human skeleton. But
no, he's back from the dead or something, because he participated in the original F Max Grand Prix 200 years before the events of F-Zero.
Oh yeah, here we go. From the F-Zero X North American Manual, this is pretty good. Age 240 years old.
Yes.
Skull was once a great legend among drivers. Using science and black magic, Skull returned from the grave to compete one more time. This is very good.
That's good. That is very good.
I also like that in Japan, his name is Arbin Gordon.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like that. I think that's
a tad less scary than a tad less intimidating than the Skull, I'll say.
Is that just like his name from like back when he was a racer 240 years ago? So it's supposed to sound like an old-fashioned name?
Maybe that could be true.
Arvin Gordon.
Arvin Gordon. Yep.
Well, that's
there's anything that like alludes to the genesis of his name, but I don't. I
mean, his head is a skull.
Yes. Yeah. He looks really cool. I mean, I'm with Techno Syndrome. This is probably the coolest character we saw.
Yeah.
Out of all the ones we were looking at last week.
Yep, he's very cool. All right, Mark, let's get into the meat of the show. Let's talk, well, actually, wait. We wanted to just like address like one thing quickly. This play test thing that signups are happening for the as of the release of this episode this morning. And of course, I've just like navigated away from it.
Yeah, at 8 a.m. Pacific, it'll be outside of Japan. It's a first come first serve, for like sign up type thing is what they're saying. Slots for about 10,000 people, which I feel like is going to go really quickly.
Real quick,
It's some sort of online playtest that's only open to current subscribers of Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack, and it runs, I think, starting like later in October and runs through early November, like really specific times. And that's all we know. It's very mysterious. We know that you'll have to download something onto your Switch, but we don't know what it's for. We don't really know what it is. It's just something Nintendo is doing.
Right. We don't know if it's cool or not. It might not be cool.
I'm gonna try to sign up for it.
I'm gonna try to sign up for it too.
Yeah.
But so just a heads up. Yes. 10 a.m.
8 a.m. Pacific time.
8 a.m. Pacific time. Is when the sign up starts for it. So get in on
Set
that.
your alarmo.
Set your alarmo, which hasn't arrived yet because it takes a couple days. And we'll be talking about Alarmo, I'm sure, on the news episode on Tuesday. So tune back in for that. But Mark, in the meantime, let's get into our topic and let's determine the eight most definitive, meaningful, pivotal moments in gaming since we started doing this show. Before we dive into so we both have a couple things. We're going to come up with a definitive list of 8 things, right, to celebrate our 8-year anniversary here. But do you feel like gaming has changed a lot since we started the show, or not?
Before I started compiling my list, I would have said, I don't think I really appreciated how much gaming has changed until I started compiling my list.
That's kind of where I am too, because I feel like the kinds of games that I play have not really changed that much. Pikmin, of course, came into my life, but beyond that, I feel like I still am mostly playing Nintendo games, and we'll dip into a little bit more hardcore stuff from time to time. There's still too much military-ish, shootery, grim dark stuff that I'm not that into. And I'm still mostly only interested in a showcase if Nintendo's doing it. But yeah, when we started the show, as Nintendo Cartridge Society, you and I went to E3, for example. I don't know if that's going to come up, but that's not a thing that exists anymore. But I guess it's maybe because the games themselves have changed. Well, I don't know. I was trying to make a statement before we get into these specifics. But every time I start to wind that up, it's no, the games have changed.
Yeah, it's when I was going through my I have 1, 2, 3. I have a few, and so I wonder if the way that we can do this is maybe we exhaust our lists, and then at the end we go through and just kind of decide which ones we want to include in the 8. But because I'm looking at some of the bullet points, and it's just there are so many touch points of change. But because I don't have that much time to game in my life, and so when I do, it is Nintendo. And the Switch has been out for so long now that it feels like that has been a constant, and then everything else in the industry and the pieces that I'm not really touching that much anymore, like PlayStation or Microsoft,
have changed a lot.
Have changed a lot. Yeah, exactly.
It's also one thing that I wanted to put on my list just as I was thinking about this, and then was oh no, we started recording after this, was Pokemon Go. Right?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Pokemon Go was a sea change, and it shifted what Pokemon was in the popular consciousness, and also just kind of changed perceptions of mobile gaming among hardcore gamers in some circles. And I was like, oh no, but that happened in the summer before we started the podcast.
Yes, maybe that's an honorable mention, because I had Pokemon exploding on as a bullet point, because Pokemon Go came out before we started the show, but Pokemon Sun and Moon came out after. Plus, we've had Sword and Shield, and we've had Scarlet and Violet, and all of the trajectory of Pokemon post Pokemon Go has just been up, up, up. It's always been a successful franchise, but it's just been reinvigorated in the time that our show has been going.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that it doesn't seem like it's done that by making universally beloved games,
right. It's kind of confusing. Spite of the I'm gonna say adult fan response to some of these games.
Right. Yes. I mean, a solid reminder that who are these games designed for, and it's probably not the adult fans. Yeah, but okay. I also have. Looks like I wrote out 8 different. I wrote out 8 points. But so would you want to just go back and forth?
Yeah, let's do that. And we might have some of the same ones, but legitimately so much has happened in the
Yes.
8 years. It also wouldn't surprise me if we don't have a single shared one.
I also, my first 2 points can arguably be the same point, but they feel different enough to me. I'm going to start with my first one.
Okay, great.
And it is the most Nintendo-y thing I could say, and it's the release of the Nintendo Switch. Like turning around Nintendo's fortunes, where it was the 3DS was already like a relic at that point, or was like kind of on its way out in terms of popularity, and the Wii U was a unmitigated disaster. There was no mitigating it, so they just abandoned it. And then the Switch establishes a brand new like form factor for hardware, that obviously there have been a lot of like imitators, some of which have been like pretty good, like the Steam Deck, and some have been very niche, like the PlayStation Portal, and then there are all these other just like rip off mobile gaming computers basically. But it's really it's the Switch. It's going to be like the second best selling piece of hardware of all time, maybe the best selling, we don't know. And is like become Nintendo's identity. Nintendo's identity is Switch at this point in time, and they don't have another pillar. It's the only one.
Yeah, that's what's so kind of like remarkable and also scary about it as we go to a new generation, because they've always had handhelds, to
Yep.
prop them up when the home consoles weren't doing that well. It's really crazy to think. So I did have this one on my list. I have a sub bullet point to this that I don't know if it'll make it into our 8 definitive, but I really wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's Nintendo going mobile and then not. And it happened, like Super Mario Run was released in 2016, and in 2016 into 2017 and even like a little bit of 2018, we were getting Nintendo, I guess maybe all the way up to 2020. Is that when Mario Kart Tour came out? But it seems like
And Dr. Mario World came out in 2020 as well. I know it doesn't exist anymore, but like that's another one, right?
Yeah, like there was just a time where Nintendo, the outside perspective, my perspective anyways, is that they caved to investor pressure just because the Wii U was such a disaster sales wise, and the 3DS was solid, but a step down from the Nintendo DS. And there was such a drumbeat of you have to have mobile games, you have to have mobile games, that Nintendo
Right.
gave into that. And then as soon as the Switch took off and the Switch was successful, they kicked that to the curb, and they couldn't do it fast enough because you could tell their heart was just not in making mobile games.
Right, like there were the stories when they were working with DNA on Dragalia Lost, that they kept trying to like take out like microtransactions, or like reducing wait times to play stuff again, because it's just not how Nintendo makes games. They're just not geared towards like the mobile market, so they had to like really give into, it's not even their worst impulses, someone else's worst impulses, to exist in that space at all, or make any money in the space at all. And it doesn't really seem like they did outside of Fire Emblem Heroes. That thing made a ton of money.
Yeah, and I think not Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing, Pocket Camp
Yeah,
probably
that was
performed
okay. Yeah.
respectably, and Mario Kart Tour, they, if nothing else, used those tracks as part of the booster course
Sure.
pass. But yeah, it was such big news when it happened. Miyamoto was at an Apple like September event to show off Super Mario Run
Right.
for the first
Crazy.
time, and now it's just a footnote because the Switch has been so
Right.
successful. So yeah,
I mean,
don't think.
you remember Jimmy Kimmel playing it on his show,
Yeah.
and like Miyamoto being in the audience and like giving him a thumbs up?
So I couldn't remember. Was that for Run or was that Switch related? Was that when they
No,
were
that
like?
was for Run. That
That's
was
so
for Run.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um.
I believe they did also bring a Switch to that, but it was for Run. Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't think that it makes our 8 just because it has become such a footnote in history. But it's
Yes.
wild that happened, and then like didn't happen. Like like
Yes.
like Nintendo
Yeah,
just
I
wants
agree.
to pretend that the mobile games are not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we were making sort of like an anti meaningful list of like, here are the 8
Labo.
things. Yeah, Nintendo Labo would be on here. Things that like seemed like they were going to be, like had the potential to be a bold new direction, and then just like faded away when they were no longer useful or popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nintendo going mobile and Labo would be like number 1 and 2 on that list.
Oh yeah, and we should just say that these are not all going to be Nintendo related. It's gaming in general.
Gaming in general, and in fact, like my second point, which again I'm saying is very much tied to like the launch of the Switch, is also Nintendo related, obviously. But then after that, I don't think any of the rest of mine are Nintendo related.
Yeah, I don't think mine are either directly.
Ooh, you and I are gonna spend some time not talking about Nintendo. What is this, 433? But before we do that, should I do my second point?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know if like this should maybe be filed under the launch of the Switch or whatever, but the release of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I completely agree with you.
Which not only transforms The Legend of Zelda as a series, but it makes every other open world game for the next 8 years automatically compared to Breath of the Wild, right? Can you climb everything? Why can't you climb everything? Can you go to objectives in any order you want? Why can't you go to objectives in any order you want? It just became the thing against which all other and a lot of other open world games have come out that have been excellent in the meantime, that have had different takes on it. But really, like, no one has tried to just copy Breath of the Wild with that like climb everywhere. It's just like it not something that like anyone else seems to be able to even approach. But it is like the yardstick against which everything else is measured.
Yeah, and the release of Breath of the Wild timed with the Switch, it really felt like a like Nintendo reinvigorated or turning over a new leaf, right? Like a new Nintendo. And I don't really think that that's fair. I don't think that that's really like an accurate representation of what was actually going on at the company. But I do think that certainly like the consumer perception with the Switch and Breath of the Wild coming out at the same time after, I mean, Breath of the Wild was released on Wii U as well.
Right.
It was coming one way or the other, but just having those two
and it probably
things...
would have come out sooner.
right.
Wii U if they weren't holding it for Switch. Yeah.
But just having those two like seismic moments in gaming synced up is just totally, it felt like a statement of purpose. And
it's a unified statement of purpose too, right? That, and I know I've said this on the show before, so forgive me, but like the Switch is sold on the idea of like, play this however you want. Take it to the park, play it on the bus, play it on your big TV at home. And Breath of the Wild is the exact same way. Play this however you want to. Do you want to fight everything? Do you want to not do any of the temples? Do you want to rush right to Ganon? Do you want to see everything? And the fact that those two things launch at the same time is this like, product thematic unity that almost never happens.
Yeah, and I also think that Zelda had kind of, as a series, had kind of fallen into kind of like a rut. People were complaining about the formula. They had dabbled with changing a little bit in A Link Between Worlds, but Breath of the Wild was such a like bold change to what had come previously in Skyward Sword that I don't know, it really just felt like a waking a sleeping giant in some ways. And then the rest of Nintendo's 2017 just continued to feed that feeling.
Yep. At 100% that like the rest of Nintendo, the Switch's launch year, like all felt special. But I think largely because of this 1-2 punch of the Switch and Breath of the Wild, that just like, it's such a statement,
Okay, my next one, my next two are kind of linked thematically a little bit, but I'm going to start with saying the success of live service games and the trend chasing that came out of that. So I'm talking about like the launch of Fortnite in 2017 and what a behemoth that has become. Apex Legends in 2019, even get like Genshin Impact in 2020. Like uh Fortnite hitting and becoming as large as it has become, but even in
Yes.
its like early years, that really shook the industry, and you had companies like Sony basically changing their entire game development philosophy, trying to create a live service game that they would be able to monetize to the same level that Epic has been able to monetize Fortnite. And you've in some ways it reminds me of the success that Marvel had with the initial run of the Marvel Cinematic Universe through Endgame, and then all of
Yeah.
these other companies trying to chase like, oh well, we'll just build our own universe where all the characters are interconnected and all that kind of
The
stuff.
dark universe.
Yes, yeah, and it didn't work out, and it hasn't worked out for so many companies, so many developers, so many um you know uh so many aspects of the industry that have been trying to chase that Fortnite, that Apex Legends like money and model.
Right. Well, and Fortnite in particular, because this Fortnite is on my list as well. I didn't go as broad as like live service games, but I just went with Fortnite. Not that it like invents that; it doesn't even really invent the like the genre that it's that made it popular, right? Like it stole that from PUBG. Um, but the fact that Fortnite is so popular and makes so much money that it is like the leg that supports the only PC gaming platform that competes with Steam, right? Like the Epic Game Store basically only exists because of Fortnite. And like it is because of that, it is able to like compete on PCs on the same level as Steam. And Steam has been around forever, and everyone has Steam games. Everyone does. Sometimes you have multiple Steam accounts because you mistyped your own name when trying to log in once. It's a true story about something that happened to me, Mark.
Yeah, I think you're totally right that Fortnite is definitely the star of this bullet point. But I really think it's interesting that in the 8 years that we've been doing this show, we've gone from Fortnite starting out, becoming huge, having Fortnite competitors, having large companies change the way that they are trying to
Right.
like develop games, and then we're now at the point where
that's falling apart. Yeah.
That's falling apart. Like that trend is ending, and people are realizing that Fortnite, like these games are unicorns. They're not something that like every company is just going to be able to develop.
Right. And that even when something is like successful, like earlier this year PlayStation had with Helldivers 2, that it's successful on a timeline, right? And then like it then is no longer as popular as it once was. It can still have players and people can still be spending money on it, but like Fortnite is always making a ton of money and a ton of people are playing it, but they're also constantly updating Fortnite.
Yeah, and that's why, like we've even speculated in the past, oh, like make Mario Kart 9 like live service game, or make Splatoon like a live
Splatoon
service.
4, yeah.
And Nintendo just doesn't have the resources. There are
No.
so many people working on Fortnite all the time that, like it would just be such a radical change for Nintendo to try to turn Animal Crossing into a live service game.
But yeah, obviously I think that's a great pick. Fortnite and the live services games starring Fortnite. Yeah, just what a huge weird shift to the industry, and also something that I would say that you and I are not that interested in.
Totally.
And in fact, not interested at all in.
When Fortnite first came to Switch, I did play it a little bit, but that was, I don't know, like maybe it was 2017, maybe it was 2018. I don't know I can't remember exactly when Fortnite arrived on Switch.
I think it was either 18 or 19 because it was after Nintendo Switch Online launched as a paid service.
Oh,
but you could still play Fortnite without having Nintendo Switch Online.
But the game, like Fortnite, is an entirely different beast than when I dabbled with it all those years ago. You know.
I mean that is the other thing too, is that it is these live service games, and in particular Fortnite, really popularized it's on every platform and it's all crossplay, right? Which was not when we started the show, was not the norm, that you and your friends would have the same game on PlayStation and Xbox, and you would not be able to play together. And it seems like that is largely the expectation now for big multiplayer online games, especially live service games. So yeah, I mean they've like changed the way that whole equation was written. And now crossplay is sort of expected. Should I move on to my next point?
I think so, yeah.
So I don't. This may be kind of a niche point, but I think it's actually bigger than that. It's Death Stranding releasing in November 2019, proving that Hideo Kojima can be a blockbuster presence in the video game industry without Konami. Kojima is obviously the godfather of the Metal Gear Solid series, has made many other video games with Konami before that, and around those times. But like when he and Konami parted ways after the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, it seemed like like what could we possibly expect from him in the future? You just don't hear that many stories of Japanese developers going out on their own and continuing to make like big AAA blockbuster things. The releases tend to kind of shrink after that, right? Like we saw it with Iga making the Bloodstained games, or the Grasshopper manufacturer guys. The games that they put out are just smaller. And like Death Stranding is a little bit more of a small game than something like Metal Gear Solid 5, but is also huge and looks real and has Hollywood actors in it, and is just a big huge IP. They're putting out a second one, and all of that without the backing of a company that isn't just Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, and Death Stranding, I've never played Death Stranding. I remember going to hanging out with a friend, and they were playing it and watching them play it. But I feel like my memory of the release of Death Stranding is just everyone being like, huh, what is this? Not the reviews weren't bad. The reviews weren't especially glowing gameplay wise. It was just like, whoa, this is very unusual. This is an experience. And I don't even now, I don't know that people really think fondly of the gameplay of Death Stranding. I think it was more the experience of playing Death Stranding that made it so singular and unique.
Yeah. But that's what a game frequently is, right? It's just a collection of experiences, and what is gameplay and what is experiential, those are all, it's all kind of tied up together. All right, Mark, your next nominee here.
Okay, so we talked about Fortnite, but I feel like another big definitive moment in gaming in the life of our show has been the Epic Games lawsuit against Apple and Google.
Yes. No, because this is another giants being taken down, right, by another giant, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it initially started because Epic released an update to Fortnite on iOS that included a way for people to buy whatever they're called, Fortnite bucks, V-bucks, something like that.
V-bucks, yeah.
Without using Apple's App Store payment system. And seemingly, my memory anyways, is that Epic did that to goad Apple into like blocking the update, getting mad at them, and then Epic used that as a pretense to sue Apple, basically saying that this is like anti-competitive, that Apple has monopoly, and then later doing that same thing with Google. The outcome of these cases could not be more different. Like Apple had a bench trial, and which means there was no jury, and like both sides kind of got something. Apple had to implement some anti-steering um regulations, which basically means they had to allow um developers to tell users that they can go to the website of the app and get like a better deal and all that kind of stuff. But then when Epic sued Google, that was a jury trial, and Google lost very terribly. And just recently, the judge put out like um, the new regulations that Google have to follow there. It's it has drawn on forever, but and continues to is ongoing. But Tim Sweeney and Epic Games,
Nope,
like
Mark, you froze up on me.
oh I
Oh no, we're good. You're back now.
Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, they really feel like they're right, and this is something that's very important to them. And I don't know that it's really reshaped the industry thus far, but our show is still going. So
Sure, so it counts.
Yep, so it counts.
But I mean, it's also like the kind of first effort to or one of the like early efforts here to regulate the modern internet, right? There's so much about the way the internet works and algorithms work that like shortcut our brains, and the way these markets have us as captive audiences that like are clearly in violation of like other anti-monopoly practices, but because they exist in non-physical space, it doesn't like work the same way, it doesn't feel the same, and so a lot of stuff is just allowed by default, or until someone with enough money to make Fortnite can challenge Apple and Google. So yeah, no, that's you're right, Mark, in that that is a seismic thing and ongoing. For my next big moment in gaming, maybe the biggest thing that's happened to the world in the last 8 years, it is the COVID-19 pandemic, which sent video game purchasing and video game playing into the stratosphere. Games had a great year in 2020. People were buying more games. People were coming back to games after having not played them for, like people who had a PlayStation growing up or like a GameCube or whatever were suddenly like, hey, I should pick up I should pick up a Switch and play Animal Crossing because everyone's doing it because we're all stuck at home. Um, uh, and it's just so bizarre that COVID-19 would be such a good thing for gaming.
Yeah, I had COVID on here as well with like a couple of bullet points. So like yes, the boom in gaming for sure. I mean, Nintendo absolutely benefited from that, Ring Fit Adventure and the launch of Animal Crossing.
Yep.
Do you think if Animal Crossing had originally launched in December 2019 or like holiday 2019,
right,
like it was scheduled to do, that it would have taken off in the same way? Maybe it would have had a long tail, and then when COVID happened, it would have
then people would have like found it.
Found it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fact that it offers like basic social interaction at a time when you couldn't have basic in-person social interaction. I mean, the answer is no, right? If it had come out 4 months earlier, then like it would still be like kind of big and people would still like it, and it probably would have gotten a little bit of a boost when COVID happened. But the fact that they like coincided, it's another launch of the Switch, launch of Breath of the Wild thing, right? It was just like the perfect thing at the perfect time. So yeah, and like Animal Crossing is a big part of that, like of the COVID gaming boom, like for sure.
So boom in gaming. Then I also have, and hopefully this doesn't step on like any of your toes, but like chip and component shortages coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
And
I don't have that, but yeah.
and like the cost for manufacturers of components like going way up and being scarce, which also leads me to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series launches and how those were in such short supply as well.
Yeah, and I don't have those as it is. It's funny that like you have the launches of the next generation consoles on here, but only to remark on the fact that they were hard to get a hold of because of chip shortages, not because the next generation was that impactful on where the world of gaming is right now. I also don't have them on here because like it just has not been that important a part of what's happened in the last 8 years. But yeah, no, I totally agree that like all of that kind of shapes what the what gaming has been since then.
So
I do have a separate COVID point after that, but go ahead.
Oh, should I move on to mine, or do you want to put your COVID point in?
No, I want to save my COVID point for later because I think it's a separate thing.
Okay. Well, yeah, neither of us have the launch of the Xbox Series or PlayStation 5 on our list. But let's just talk about Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, because I think
I
that
have this
also
on my list.
yeah, was like
Yes.
a seismic shift in the video game industry. There has been a lot of consolidation in the video game industry in the 8 years that this show has been running. Um, and but Activision Blizzard was the biggie, and continues to be, uh, partly because it's completely reshaped Microsoft gaming and what that is. Previously, it was mostly almost exclusively Xbox, and now Xbox is a tiny footnote in what Microsoft gaming is. I think in the last quarter that they reported earnings, um, Microsoft gaming would have lost $2 billion or something if it wasn't for Activision Blizzard and Activision Blizzard King. And with owning Activision Blizzard King, they had like billions of dollars in revenue.
In revenue,
And
right?
so, yeah, a big shift.
A big shift, and is also another case where uh like the power of like law and regulation was also levied against one of these enormous companies to try and like stop some things from happening, and in lieu of that, some concessions made on the part of Microsoft. So they had these things where Call of Duty is going to be coming out on Switch for the next 10 years or whatever, and uh, so like all of that's very big. But like the other sort of like part of like Activision Blizzard being now part of like Xbox or Microsoft or whatever, is that like because those games are used to being everywhere and people are used to those games being everywhere, like it's too big of an economic interest within Xbox to be relegated to just the Xbox platform. So like that suddenly makes all of the games on Xbox. It's like, oh yeah, why aren't we releasing our smaller or just like other games on other platforms? And earlier this year they were like, we're releasing 4 Xbox exclusive games on other platforms, 2 on PlayStation, 2 on Nintendo Switch. But don't worry, we're not talking about games like Indiana Jones. And then just a couple weeks ago, we had trailers for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. No, what's the name of the Cursed Circle? Maybe Great
Uh,
Circle. What's it called?
I'll look it up. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
great. But that game is coming out at the end of the year for Xbox, and then like in February for PlayStation. So like even with something that at the time that they were deciding to go a little bit more broadly multi-platform, they're like they said no Indiana Jones, and now they're just sort of quietly being like, yeah, Indiana Jones too.
The Great Circle.
Great Circle. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I have another bullet point on my list that I'll just go ahead and add now because I do think it's a corollary to this, and that's Microsoft game strategy in general.
Sure.
And that shift that you were just talking about now, where it's like, I guess in a lot of ways we're just a third party developer now. That's just what Xbox
Yeah.
is.
Well, it's a combination of things, right? Because it's that, and it's also Xbox Game Pass. And like Game Pass in its like current incarnation. When did they start doing that? That probably falls in in the run of our show, where they just make first party games available day and date on the subscription platform. Something that no one else has done, right? Like Nintendo obviously will never do that. And like PlayStation has a subscription service that does have like some games on it, but it's not all first party games the day they come out.
Yeah, and because Microsoft's the only company that seemingly needs to do it, or has decided that that's like a strategy that they want to pursue. It is.
Does it seem like it's possibly profitable? Like how, and like you mentioned, like the Activision Blizzard King stuff is what's been buoying Microsoft in the last 2 years in terms of revenue. But like, are they just losing money on Game Pass and like their first party games?
Yeah, I don't know because you would think theoretically a subscription service like that would do well for them because they only, they develop the game once and then they sell it in perpetuity with a subscription. But I don't know, maybe they were the payouts to developers to get games on
Yeah.
Game Pass. Um yeah, I'm not sure. But it's also interesting that, thanks to the Activision Blizzard King acquisition and the FTC in the US, suing to try to stop it, there were all of these honestly like legal documents that ended up leaking, and they included all
Right.
these emails, with Microsoft leadership and all that kind of stuff. And we learned that Microsoft was feeling really high before the Series consoles launched. They thought that the Series S and the Series X were going to really be something and be very successful and bring them back from kind of the Xbox One, and it has not turned out that way. And it's just so interesting that to have their fortunes turn, or what they were expecting their fortunes to be, to just end up the strategy just being so different.
Yep. Yep. And the fact that they've been like in constant pivot mode for
Yeah.
for the last 4 years is pretty remarkable. All right, so I'm taking Activision Blizzard King off my list. Those are good points. I feel like we may end up condensing them when we just like get to our 8 most pivotal moments. Okay, here's one that may or may not make the list here. Resident Evil 2 remake sort of reasserts Capcom as like a global player on the AAA space stage, whatever. And introduces the world to the RE engine that we were just talking about on the news episode this week. And now, like when Capcom puts out like a new AAA game, you expect it to look as good as Resident Evil 2 and be as fun as that, and it has been. Like I Capcom's been on like a streak lately. When they put out a new big game, it's like a successful iteration of that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Resident Evil 2 remake, we could add Monster Hunter World to this
Yep.
list of,
Yep.
just like series that seemingly really found their footing in a whole new way this generation.
Yeah. Well, and like, maybe to a lesser extent, but I think also like Street Fighter 6 goes on that list too. Like, it's just like they have like figured out how to do this stuff now. In like the modern era. Like especially when you consider that like Street Fighter 5 was kind of a quieter release for them. The Resident Evil games were kind of slouching for a while. All of that stuff. And now it's just like nope, they righted the ship, and now when Capcom puts out a big game, it is something to stand up and take notice of.
Yeah, you're right. They really are on a tear right now. It's like
Yeah.
the opposite of Square Enix.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's not even really like Square Enix is putting out bad games. They're just like I don't know what possible sales expectations they could have had for like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16. Um, but they're also both like next gen exclusives, of PS5 exclusives specifically. So they're really capped on what they can sell. But yeah, I mean, I do agree that like Capcom's making it look easy and Square's making it look hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Square also had this weird, I don't even know where they stand on it now, but I feel like
Right.
in 2020 everybody was like blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. And Square Enix put out this whole thing being like, we're
That's
all
right.
in on blockchain. It just it feels like Square Enix is chasing trends instead of, in a desperate attempt to curry favor with investors, instead
Yeah.
of having like a real vision for what they want to be doing.
Yep.
Okay. My next one is Cyberpunk 2077's troubled launch in December of 2020,
This is a great point. Yes.
where it was so buggy and that it got delisted from the PlayStation Store and from Xbox, I think, as well.
Yeah, was it delisted from Xbox? I know it was delisted from PlayStation for sure. I can't remember if it also happened to Xbox.
But I think this one is especially interesting to me because when it came out, the reviews were good, and then the performance, was like really bad, and now the game is back to being incredibly successful. And
Right.
we've seen a similar thing, maybe also during the life of the show, with Fallout 76, where it released, or No Man's Sky
Right.
released, kind of had like weird reception, and then with time has been able to rehabilitate itself. And all three of these now, Fallout 76, Cyberpunk 2077, and No Man's Sky, are all incredibly successful.
Yeah, that's an interesting reflection of your like note about the live service games, right? Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Genshin Impact, the three that you have listed there. Because not that Cyberpunk isn't a live service game, but it's just like here's the game, and like it goes out and then we need to fix it, right? Like the live service is just making it what it should have been in the first place.
Yeah, but it's interesting. When a game, and maybe it's because Cyberpunk 2077 was after The Witcher 3 was
Yeah.
so successful and beloved, that people were looking forward to it so much that they were willing to give it, like the grace of, okay, when they release these updates, I'll come back to this game
Yeah.
and have like a good time with it. I don't know. It's just so there are games that, and I don't know what the tipping point is, but there are games that are allowed to do that where people are willing to wait. And then there are games like, poor Square Enix, but they're like Marvel Avengers game where people are like, no, it's I'm not coming back.
I'm not
to this.
coming back.
It doesn't
Right.
matter what you do. Speaking of, well, no. I'll wait. Anyways, Cyberpunk 2077's trouble launch. That's my next one.
That's great. I have only one more to go here. And it is my like COVID related note here. But 2023 being the year of COVID delays coming home to roost. So one of the other things that happened with COVID-19 was people were working from home, teams weren't together, and it meant that production slowed way down. So there was a period where we just weren't getting the games that we thought we were going to be getting in 2021, 2022, even throughout 2020. And it really felt like 2023 was just that ridiculous year where Street Fighter 6, Final Fantasy 16, Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, Mario Wonder, Baldur's Gate 3, Resident Evil 4, Spider-Man 2, all these games come out and are huge and like by all accounts like pretty good. 2023 is going to go down as like one of those bizarrely good years for gaming. And I think we recognized it at the time. But in a couple of years, people will have forgotten why it is shaped that way, and I think it owes a large debt to the delays from COVID all landing at that same time.
Yeah, That's a really good one. I had forgotten that all of those games hit in 2023.
I believe Final Fantasy, Street Fighter, and maybe Baldur's Gate all came out in the same month.
Yeah,
Like
wild.
it doesn't make a lot of sense looking at that list that all these games came out, and I'm leaving out a bunch of course, but those are all like high profile big games that turned out well, which is remarkable.
I think that's such a good one. I just want to append kind of like a mini one on top of that, because a game that also came out in 2023 but was not that well received is Starfield. But I think feel like
Oh yeah,
I feel like
absolutely.
Starfield is an interesting story in that it was Bethesda's has been working on it for so much time, Fallout in space, and finally Starfield is released, and to kind of a shrug. It's not that people hated it. It's just that I think people's expectations were greater than what the game was able to deliver, and it's never been able to escape that kind of mediocre reputation. Something that
Right.
should have been one of the biggest games of 2023 just kind of came and went.
Hey man, if it came out the year before, it would have like stood a shot of standing out, right? Like the year brought tough competition.
But that's it. I think that let me look. I think that is my list as well.
Oh, okay, great. So now, we're just putting Starfield as like a separate line item, or is that just part of the 2023?
I kind of feel like it's a separate narrative, just because there
Okay.
was so much hype and expectation around it, and then to have it come out and just do what it did, I think
Right.
is an interesting story.
Okay. So let's run down what we have currently, and then we'll narrow it down to the 8 that we think are definitive. So we have them as bullet points now, but let's change this to a numbered list because it'll tell us exactly how many there are. We have 13 at present. We need to get it down to 8. So we've got the Switch's popularity,
Nintendo going mobile and then not.
Breath of the Wild,
Live service games, the success of them like Fortnite, and then the trend chasing that created.
follows. Yeah. Death Stranding and Hideo Kojima leaving Konami and still being a big deal.
Epic Games versus Apple and Google.
The COVID-19 gaming boom.
Microsoft and the Activision Blizzard King acquisition.
Microsoft's game strategy in general.
Resident Evil 2 remake.
Cyberpunk 2077's troubled launch.
2023, the year of COVID delays, coming home.
And then finally Starfield. Okay, so we've got to cut 5 of these. These are all good candidates for. Actually, let's cut the Nintendo Goes Mobile and then doesn't. I love it as an observation, but it is sort of like the opposite of like an impactful moment.
Yeah,
right?
It's like an anti-story.
Yeah. What else on here feels maybe a little less? Well, let me.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say Starfield.
Okay.
As its own line item. I would say Death Stranding and Kojima, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably another one that can go away. A big deal, but not on the same level as all these. What about combining the Microsoft game strategy with the acquisition of Activision Blizzard King?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's like Microsoft, yes, and just their strategy in general.
Yeah, even though like those have two like separate and like huge impacts, there's a lot of overlap in like how they, especially like for the end user that is like the gamer. Okay, so that means we only have one more here that we need to cut, and then we've got a good list of 8. Any thoughts here?
I think maybe the Resident Evil 2 remake and kind of like Capcom's Renaissance.
Yeah, it does feel like smaller potatoes compared to the rest of this stuff. Because it's really just like Capcom continues to be good. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go.
I think it's either that one or Cyberpunk 2077, which was huge in the moment, but I wouldn't say
Right.
has had a lasting impact on the industry.
Well, except that like the turnaround story of it kind of has, right? That like um when it relaunched with the Cyber Liberty, what's the what's the DLC called?
Yeah, something Liberty. Something
It
Liberty.
is something Liberty. And it's not Phantom Liberty, right?
No, that sounds too Metal Gear Solid.
That's too Metal Geary.
No, you're right. It is.
I
Phantom
am right.
Liberty.
It is Phantom Liberty. Okay.
Phantom Liberty.
Woo! That like that turnaround and like that making lemonade out of lemons, like I think is a relevant story. Maybe we should it should be Resident Evil. What are you?
I was just saying that released in 2023. The the Phantom Liberty expansion.
There you go. So yeah, the only other argument that I might consider making is combining Breath of the Wild with the Switch launch, but they're two set. I know that they happen on the same day, but they're separate beats.
Yes, and I think the Switch's popularity was the was the initial point, not just like the launch of the Switch.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay. So let's I think Resident Evil 2 remake has got to go.
It is a good runner up though.
Yes, yeah. They're all good runners up. Okay, so let's just recap our list in no particular order here. The 8 moments or phenomenons or games or whatever that define the period during which you and I have been recording this show to date. First is this popularity of the Nintendo Switch.
The second is Breath of the Wild.
3 is live service games.
4 is Epic Games versus Apple and Google.
5, we've got the COVID gaming boom.
6, Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard King and changing their game strategy after that.
And sort of before it, too. Like, it's all part of one thing. And number 7, Cyberpunk 2077's troubled launch in December 2020.
And then finally, 2023 being the year of those COVID delays, bearing fruit.
All right, Mark, I think we made a great list here. I think this is good. What do you think is going to happen in the next 8 years?
Oh, man. I mean, we already know we have one item in there, Alarmo.
Alarmo. We got to go back. We didn't start with Alarmo. Oh, God. Okay, Mark, let's close this out. That is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. If there are any huge moments or things in gaming over the last 8 years that we missed, email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And we're talking about big things that like shifted landscapes, changed economies, big things, paradigm shifts is what we're talking about here. So like, we didn't talk about, there being like 3 new Xenoblade games. Okay. That's not what we mean.
Did you buy all of them? No, you didn't buy 3,
No, I did not buy 3,
yeah,
but I did buy the amiibo for 3. I did briefly consider Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on here as just like a prestige single player Star Wars game. Felt like something that like on that scale that we hadn't had in like a serious way since like The Force Unleashed, but then I was like, that's also not that long ago, and maybe isn't that like particular, but so bigger. That's the baseline. It's got to be bigger than that. Okay.
Good luck.
Good luck, everyone. And hey, will I be rude about it if we get one that's too small? No way to know. All right, that's going to do it for the show. Thank you so much to our 16-bit patrons, Connor McCabe, Patrice Millette, Kyle Seaborn. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who's listening to this show or interacting with it in any way, shape, or form. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Email us, and we will send you an invitation. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.